Right, 4:30 in the morning, April 12th, 1861. It was a 10-inch mortar.
It was at Fort Johnson.
It was at Fort, well, we call it Fort Johnson, but it was called the East Battery. So it was, you have what you would think of the regular walls of Fort Johnson, and this was just outside, and a little bit closer to Sumter, a little towards the Morris Island side, if you go over to Fort Johnson today. And that land area has eroded away over the years, and so that's out in the water now. But there was the East Battery and the West Battery, and Captain George S. James commanded the commanded the artillery there at Fort Johnson and directed the firing of the first shot. And so that shell explodes directly over Fort Sumter at 4:30 in the morning, April 12th, 1861, and that's the signal for all the Confederate guns to open up. And 43 guns and mortars go into action from north, Mount Pleasant, along the shoreline there, a mortar battery there. 3 batteries from less than a mile away on Cummings Point. So from the south, they're getting fire. From the east at Fort Moultrie, and a couple of batteries there, and the floating battery off the tip of the island there. So from the east, they're getting fire, and then over here, the batteries over here at Fort Johnson, the 2 mortar batteries. Apparently, 1 gun in Johnson could be angled enough to bear on the fort and opened up as well.
When they fire the first shot and they open up and everybody starts firing, Anderson didn't return fire for a while. What was going on?
Well, he wanted to wait until it was daylight, so to have a better view of everything. Remember, in those days, everything was direct fire, meaning you have to see the target before you can shoot at it or hit it. You know, today we're so used to guided weaponry, night vision capabilities, and all that sort of thing. They didn't exist. So in artillery, you have direct fire and indirect fire. So he wanted to wait for that direct line of fire where they can actually see and have a better chance of hitting what they were shooting at. Plus, Anderson has plenty of powder here, thousands of pounds of powder. But that powder has to be placed in, a cartridge bag. And when they got, not long after they got here, they're doing everything in preparation, they discover just a couple of days before the bombardment starts, we have very few cartridges, bags made up to put powder in. So Lieutenant Richard Kidder Meade, who was the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, he's given the assignment of preparing cartridge bags. So they go up and they start cutting up blankets and sheets, any extra cloth of any kind they can find, but they only have 1 sewing needle in the entire fort. But they're sewing these bags together and getting filled with powder and putting them in the magazine and getting ready. So they got to be careful because they only have a limited number. And in this case, it's only going to be a finite amount of cloth that they can cut up and make into these cartridges to fire. So that's one of the determining factors. Good daylight so they can see what they're shooting at, and they have a limited number of cartridges in which they can fill to fire the guns.